Hey, what's going on? I'm Damon, Director of Dude-ism for Type D. So this Barnwood Headboard project we're going to look at. Basically, here's all the material you're going to look to get at Home Depot to set up for the project. And when you mix and match all the magic that's going on, you're going to end up with something like this. You can see it's very rustic and nice. Oh, sorry. It's very rustic and nice, and you know, it looks impressive. It looks like it's aged. It's got that whole vibe that you're after, except we used it with cheaper materials and we just aged it and made it look the part. So to start off, we grabbed 12 by 8 foot long rustic pine, a rougher, unfinished piece of wood you can find at Home Depot. They're about $8 to $10 per plank. We grabbed 4 of those, some strapping that you could see before, which is going to just be 2.5 inch by 4 foot long by 1/8 inch thick piece of steel. 1 by 2 piece of pine that's going to go on the back to support all the planks. I got a piece of 1 by 10 by 4 foot, which we're going to use to actually hang onto the wall. And that's it for materials. We have nuts and bolts, which are going to attach the steel strapping to the actual wood. We've got some stain, which we're going to put over the wood to make it a little bit more rustic and look a little bit more weathered, like we were talking about before. And then just all the tools. We've got a tray, you know, we've got, you know, a can opener, all that kind of stuff, a square. You need safety goggles. I'm not your mom, but it's probably for the best. 7/16 socket wrench just to attach all the bolts. 18-volt cordless drill or impact driver. It could be 12 volts. I'm not going to judge you, but 18 volts, you know, just shows a little bit more of that power. Then drill bit to drill the metal. Sharpie marker to mark the actual steel because the pencil's not going to show up. Pencil for the wall or for the wood, tape measurer, and that's pretty much it. And gloves if you want, but if you have a girl coming over, it may look a little bit more impressive if your hands are dirty. So this is the 12 by 8 foot long knotty pine that I picked up. I found the knottiest of the pine. We are making a headboard after all. So you're looking for knots and you're looking for, you know, chipped edges and cracks and all that kind of stuff because we're trying to replicate, you know, 100-year-old piece of barnwood, right? So what you want to do is lay it out, look at where all the funky details are, and just kind of stagger them back and forth. So I took this massive, you know, sort of knot, put it over here, offset it with another knot over there, and so on and so forth, right? So you want to really look at the sides of your boards, find out which surfaces look, you know, the best for what you're after, and lay it out accordingly. Okay, so the next step is we're going to find the length of our headboard. So right now we're starting with 8 foot long planks. And for my particular project, I want it to be 94.5 inches wide by 4 feet tall. So I picked these 12-inch wide planks because the 4 of them add up to the 4 feet that I want, so I don't have to rip them down and cut any length. But for the edges, we're going to measure our 94.5. So we're going to go all the way across here. We're finding 94.5, right? We're going to take our square, square it up to the edge, draw our line, and then we're going to do that for every other plank, cut them down to size, and then that's what we have to work with. Okay, so the next stage of this project, basically I took all the planks and flipped them completely over, so now we're looking at the back of the headboard, and we're going to put in some supports just to fasten them all together with this 1 by 2 pine. Just a rough cut, doesn't have to be polished. We got 1. Match it up, don't have to measure twice. And then we got our 2. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just we cut our strapping in the back to our 48 inches. And we're going to fasten that on the back. Remember, this is the back side, so you're not going to see any of this. Then we'll flip it over, put the metal strapping over top to hide it all, and you're laughing after that. So I grabbed 1.5 inch screws because the total depth of this thing, inch plus an inch, is about 2 inches, and we don't want this little point popping through. So I'll grab some, you know, just regular countersunk 1.5 inch screws, measure it out so that we're set back from the edge so that the strapping goes over, so any gap in between the boards is not going to show this little piece of strapping. Drill in. And that's it. Do the same to the other side, and then we'll flip it back over again. So this is the front side of the board. So what I've done is I picked up this, it's called sun bleached wood stain. And what it's going to do is it's kind of semi-transparent. It's going to coat this wood, give it almost this sort of gray-y texture, you know, like coloring. And it's going to look more like it's been sitting in the sun than as it sits right now. So as you can see, we're just adding a little light gray tone to this. We want to make it seem like it's been sitting in the sun. And when it dries, you'll see a little bit more of what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is all stained up. Everything's dry. I went on 2 coats just because I want it to be a little bit darker. But as you can see, the more you put it on, the more, you know, it starts to darken up and get those real gray tones. And now what we're going to do is line everything up. And these, you know, if you don't have a hacksaw or a grinder or anything to cut these, you can get them cut to size. So that's always why we want to emphasize, you know, planning out your whole project. So I knew that I wanted to be 48 inches, so I got metal supermarkets to cut these literally to 48 inches. We're going to mark the center of this. So if this is 2.5 inches, we need 1 1/4, which is going to be our center. And we have each board that is 12 inches. So what I like to do is always keep everything spaced 2 inches. So from our top of our board, we're going to go 2 inches down. So we can mark that. So if I go 12, I'm going to go down to 10 for our first bolts. And from the middle point between these 2 boards, we're going to go up 2. So we're going to go up to 2. And then we're going to cross over, do our 1 1/4. So we find the center point. So we are all marked out on all the metal. We're going to start drilling our 1/4 inch holes so that our lag bolts can fit through and screw into the wood. A little tool that I use to punch into metal so that my drill bit doesn't wander is a punch. This is actually a spring-loaded punch. And basically it's a one-handed operation. You put the center on exactly where you want to drill, and you just press down, and you hear that? It punches a little tiny indent into your metal. And what that allows your drill to do is stay in a little guide, so the tip of your drill bit is always going to stay centered on that mark. 1/4 inch is one of those measurements where it's not going to take that much energy to drill, so I'm just going to go ahead and drill it straight into the material. So the little tip of your drill bit, you want to line up centered in that little punch. Start drilling, you'll see the drill. You should always offset the hole from your work. I'm using my work as sort of my work table. You have another work table, set it up over there. If you are using this as your kind of work table, offset the hole so that when you puncture through the metal, you're not going to actually go into your headboard. So now we've gone through the whole tedious task of drilling pretty much 8 holes per thing. So we had a nice little 32 holes to drill in steel, which, as you probably know, if you're building this, is not the most fun thing to do. But now they're drilled, so now we can move on to the next part, which is basically just bolting these suckers down and calling it a day. I've got another pilot hole just because it's easier to crank our little lag bolts into it. So now that I've got my guides, I make sure that, you know, I've got my 2-inch space from the edge so that this is spaced properly. I'm going to drill pretty much just like a subtle little pilot hole just through the center. Our lag bolts are 1 inch deep, so we're going to go pretty much right through the wood. You know, 1, make sure you clamp this down with your hand so that it doesn't move and everything else gets out of place. It's going to be easy because we've got those pilot holes already drilled. We're going to use our socket wrench, crank them in. So another tedious task, but all the hard work will have paid off soon. So we're going to just finger tighten it in by hand and then crank it in with the ratchet. So just finishing off this last mother effing bolt. We got 32 of these little suckers. It was a little tedious, but when it's all cranked out, you can see that it kind of pays off, right? It's giving that little facade like it's all sort of riveted together or whatever. So if you remember from the beginning, we had this 10-inch wide by 4-foot long piece of pine, and I'm going to use that to pretty much make our own sort of mounting hardware so we can mount this thing up to the wall so it's not going to fall forward. So all I did is I took on my table saw, put my blade at 45 degrees, and I cut this into 2 pieces. So one piece is going to get mounted to the back of the headboard and one piece is going to get mounted to the wall, and that's going to allow us to sort of plop the headboard onto the wall so it's secured by the wall and not going to tilt forward. Set it up right So we got 15 inches from the top because we can't rely on our ground being perfectly level. And so I've already marked it on both sides. So set it up to the wood, slowly to set it into the wood, and then just enough so you're in nice and solid. We've got the other side going. And then every 6 inches or so, we'll probably break it into 4. So we'll put 2 more here, 2 more there. So we've got our top, I don't know, let's call it a ledger. I don't even know what they call it. It's probably some fancy word for it, whatever. Board, let's go with that. We've mounted that up. And then we've got our female counterpart. So, you know, like maybe some of the action going on in the bed, these two mate together. And this will get mounted to your wall. So imagine I'm in the wall. Mounted to your wall, the headboard gets lifted up, and then the two mate together, and that headboard's not going to go anywhere. So this bottom part secured to the wall, this top part secured to your headboard. The 45-degree miter is what's going to keep it from falling off the wall. So when you go to mount this thing, you want to make sure that you know exactly where these dimensions are. I would go a little bit above the ground so that this thing is slightly floating and not all the pressure is resting on it in case you get it slightly wrong. But even if it's like that, you know, it's going to be a little bit wobbly. So you want to make sure you get those measurements bang on, no pun intended, and you know, it'll be nice and secure to your wall. Keep your eyes on your fingers. Simple. You can do it yourself too. I'm Damon from Type D. Dude out. Till next time. We'll catch you on the next one.